Grade 9, Chapter 6, My Childhood. This is an extract from APJ Abdul Kalam's autobiography, and we all have read his book, Wings of Fire. So, this is an extract from Wings of Fire. APJ Abdul Kalam's biography is titled Wings of Fire, and in the chapter My Childhood, he talks about how he had been brought up, his parents, and his siblings who supported him throughout his lifetime. He also talks about his friends and all those things that influenced his childhood. Can you think of any scientists who have also been statesmen? APJ Abdul Kalam, whose projects in space defense and nuclear technology guided India into the 21st century, became our 11th president in 2002. In this autobiography, Wings of Fire, he speaks of his childhood. If you read the chapter, you learn about how his life was when he was young. I was born into a middle class Tamil family in the island town of Rameshwaram in the erstwhile Madras state. My father, Jainulabdin, had neither much formal education nor much wealth. Despite these disadvantages, he possessed great innate wisdom and a true generosity of spirit. So he talks about his father who did not have formal education, but still he had helped him a lot to be a good human being. We also learn about his siblings and his parents in the chapter. I was one of many children, a short boy with rather undistinguished looks, born to tall and handsome parents. We lived in our ancestral house, which was built in the middle of the 19th century. So, when we talk about Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, he states that he was a simple looking boy and he lived in the ancestral house that belongs to his ancestors. Although he dreamt of powerful nation, when he talks about his childhood, he states that he had seen India during the time of Second World War. When the Second World War broke out in 1939, he was 8 years old. For reasons he never been able to understand, a sudden demand of tamarind seeds erupted in market. He used to collect the seeds and sell them to a provision shop on Moss Street. A day's collection would fetch him the princely sum of 1 anna. So this is how he used to earn hardly some negligible amount that he thought would not last for long. So it was like he earned 1 anna just by selling little bit of tamarind, a small amount of tamarind to the provision shop at the street near the mosque. If we read further, we learn that his brother-in-law Jaluddin would tell him stories about war, which he would later attempt to trace in the headlines in the newspaper named Dinamani. He said, our area being isolated was completely unaffected by the war. So he is stating here that although he had experienced the time when the Second World War broke out, but Their area was isolated and unaffected by the war. The first casualty came in the form of the suspension of the train halt at Rameshwaram station. The newspapers now had to be bundled and thrown out from the moving train on the Rameshwaram road between Rameshwaram and Danskoli. That forced my cousin Samsuddin, who distributed newspapers in Rameswaram, to look for a helping hand to catch the bundles, and this is how naturally it came to him that he should be a great help to his brother, that is his cousin, and this is how he also started distributing newspapers in the area. Every child is born with some inherited characteristics into a specific socio-economic and emotional environment, he says. And then the child is trained in certain ways by figures of authority. So when the child is brought up, born and brought up, everything in his surroundings affects him. So he talks about himself when he was a child, that he had observed so many things in life that he has been grown up to be a great human being. I inherited honesty and self discipline from my father. From my mother, I inherited faith and goodness and deep kindness, and so did my three brothers and sister. So, this is how his siblings and he himself had inherited innate qualities, and they have been inspired by their parents. So, this is what he said, that he being honest and self disciplined is something that he had gained from his parents. One best book is equal to 100 good friends, but one good friend is equal to a library. It is a great quote. Why does he quote something like this? I had three close friends in my childhood: Ramananda Sastri, Arvindan, and Shiva Prakashan. All these boys were from Orthodox Hindu Brahmin families. As children, none of us ever felt any difference amongst ourselves because of our religious differences and upbringing. So, here APJ Abdul Kalam talks about his friends. He had three close friends, and as children, they never distinguished their family backgrounds. Although his friends belonged to Orthodox Hindu Brahmin families, they all lived together happily, and there was no religious difference or religious differences that they did point out in each other. In fact, Ramananda Sastri was the son of the Pakshi Lakshmana Sastri, the high priest of the Rameshwaram temple. Later, he took over the priesthood of the Rameshwaram temple from his father. Arvindan went into the business of arranging transport for visiting pilgrims, and Shiva Prakashan became a catering contractor for the Southern Railways. So, this is how his three friends had joined different professions and different occupations, or we can say different fields. And as they grew up, they never thought about any religious differences. They all mingled well with each other, and they respected the religious differences that they had. Even their family members did not think about any such differences. During the annual Sri Sitaram Kalyanam ceremony, our family used to arrange boats with a special platform for carrying idols of the Lord from the temple to the marriage site. situated in the middle of the pond called Rama Tirtha, which was near our house. Events from the Ramayana and from the life of the prophet were the bedtime stories my mother and grandmother would tell the children in our family. So, this is something he talks about the Hinduism that was followed by his family members and his friends, and nothing affected him at all. They did talk about Ramayana and they did enjoy the religious ceremonies that were conducted and organized by the Hindu families in his society. If you read further, you learn about how were his school days. How did his teachers treat him? One day, when I was in the fifth standard at the Rameshwaram Elementary School, a new teacher came to our class. I used to wear a cap which marked me as a Muslim, and I always sat in the front row next to Ramananda Sastri, who wore the sacred thread. The new teacher could not stomach a Hindu priest's son sitting with a Muslim boy. So, this is how the teacher talked about religious bias. And he did not like the Hindu boy, the priest's son, to make friends with the Muslim boy, that is APJ Abdul Kalam. After school, we went home and told our respective parents about the incident. Lakshmana Sastri summoned the teacher and, in our presence, told the teacher that he should not spread the poison of social inequality and communal intolerance in the minds of innocent children. So, this is how the teacher was summoned for his comment that he had made in the class. On the whole, the small society of Rameshwaram was very rigid in terms of the segregation of different social groups. However, my science teacher, Shiva Subramania Iyer, though an orthodox Brahmin with a very conservative wife, was something of a rebel. Kalam, I want you to develop so that you are on par with the highly educated people of the big cities. So here he is praising his science teacher who had been a rebellion, and he also asked him to do something in his life, and he motivated and inspired him to be at par with the highly educated people of the big cities. Then the Second World War was over. So before the Second World War broke out, he had been living in a small house, and he said that his area was not really affected by the war. But after the war was over, India's freedom was imminent. Indians will build their own India, declared Gandhiji. The whole country was filled with an unprecedented optimism. I asked my father for the permission to leave Rameshwaram and study at the district headquarters in Ramanathapuram. So he was willing to go to Ramanathapuram where he can pursue his education. His father told him that we should grow. He said, Abdul, I know you have to go away to grow. Does the seagull not fly across the sun alone with or without a nest? He said. He quoted Khalil Gibran to my hesitant mother. He says, your children are not your children. So, this is how Abdul Kalam's father made Kalam's mother understand why it was important for APJ Abdul Kalam to shift elsewhere and grow as an individual. So, this is what we learn in the chapter My Childhood. Read the story. You may also read the autobiography of APJ Abdul Kalam